All right. Hey, CAD 101. I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. Um, all right. So we're going to talk about some things. So your guys' drawings were looking really good. Um, yeah, a lot of really good work being done. I was really impressed. Pretty cool. So one of the things that comes up every time is that I'll go over again. Is decimal precision. And I get why some folks are forgetting about it. It's kind of buried in a menu, but we're going to talk a little bit about decimal precision and then also how to change the decimal style, because we're going to change the style of our dimensions today to match the drawing set. So on the screen right now is example 3. We skipped example 3. I think we skipped down below that one because I wanted to do something else. But I'm going to pull this over. Here's our drawing set. So we did 1 and 2. We skipped this guy and went on to 4 and 5. So we're going to go back to 3. And we're going to talk about that today. So this should look pretty easy when you look at it right now. You're like, oh, that's pretty simple compared to what what we're going to do. But let's just talk about a couple of things. So we're going to talk about center marks today, and we're going to talk about axes going down the center of through holes and what we use those for. So I'm going to bring this back over out of the way. And let's talk briefly about the precision again. So right now we've got 3 decimals of precision. Usually by default it's 4 in AutoCAD. So a lot of folks are changing to 3 decimals, which is great. 4 decimals of precision is 1/10,000th of an inch, which is insanely small. So a human hair is about 5 thousandths. So in a machine shop, if you're doing anything outside of 10 thousandths, you're probably remaking the part. So in the range of 5 to 10 thousandths is where we want to be measuring down to. So 4 decimals would not be a normal thing to have on a drawing going to a shop, like a mechanical kind of shop. Anyway, here's the annotation tab. We're going to click this annotation arrow, the down arrow. It's going to open. And then right here is our dimension style. We'll click that. Then we got to go down to manage dimension styles. And we're going to say modify. Then this opens up a menu with a bunch of other sub tabs in here that you can toggle between. The one we're going to concern ourselves with today is primary units. And as you can see, we're in decimal and we're in 3 decimals of precision. I'll just change that to 2 so you guys can see that a change was made. We'll click OK and close. We are ultimately going to have 3 decimals of precision. And then in the next drawing, after you finish 3, if we scroll down, the next one is going to be 6, which you can see is in fractions of an inch. I don't like fractions, but it's important to know how to change your dimension style in case a customer or teacher wants you to change it to fractions. So let's go ahead and change that to fractions. And then you can see how, because let me just come back, on 6 and 7, you guys are going to be required to have yours in fractions of an inch. So let's just go ahead and do that. So again, we're going to go back to the annotation tab, back to dimension style, all the way down to manage dimension styles, modify, primary units, and right here, unit format. We can change this to let's see, fractional. It's sometimes called, you can do architectural as well. We'll just say fractional. Here's your precision down to 1/4 of an inch. We'll just leave it at 1/4 of an inch. If you have, in the way you would know which to do it at, which precision, actually we have an 1/8 inch. You're gonna look for the smallest, basically the smallest fraction, which is an 1/8 of an inch. Good thing I looked at that. Okay, so we're gonna drop ours to an 1/8 of an inch, and then we'll say okay and close. And there we've got fractional dimension values, which unless you're in architecture or construction type applications, you wouldn't use fractions. If you're working with mechanical things, machine shops, etc., it would all be in decimals. But we'll leave it. Actually, I'm not going to leave it. I don't like doing that. You could, what I do is I usually just dimension everything in decimals because I prefer decimals, and then just switch my dimension style at the end. I'm not going to go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I'm going to mess this all up. Manage dimension styles, modify. Okay. 3 decimal places. And we're there. Okay. Phew. Back to decimals. All right. So the next thing I was going to talk about are center marks and these lines that go through, and I'm going to delete that one, through the center. So what these are these are axis lines that go through, because looking from the side, if you're looking at the one view, it'd be difficult to tell what shape this hole is without this other view. And so what we do, well, there's that, if you see a center line like an axis coming through, that through hole is round and not some other shape like a slot or something like that. The other thing that allows us to do is to dimension to those center points. So a center point and a center axis, those are also meant to dimension to. So you can run your dimensions up to those features. Hidden lines, however, like this guy, those are not meant, you're not supposed to dimension to those. So that's another rule. So we're going to go ahead and delete that. That's not in the right spot. And so what you'd want to do is dimension it in a view where that line is solid. So is a visible line like this one right here. You could dimension that one. All right, so let's talk about how to get these center lines and center points placed. So we're going to go up to the annotation tab, and actually it's the annotation tab up here. So annotate. So we've got the annotate tab, which you can click down, and then we've got the annotate tab up here. If we click that, we end up with a new menu. It switches our menu. This is about the only time we navigate away from the home menu. So early in the class, I mentioned you might accidentally click up here, in which case your menu goes away. But if you just come back to the home tab, it's all restored. In this case, we're going to go over to annotate. We're going to say center line, and it's pretty simple. You just click one hidden line and then the other hidden line, and it puts a center line in between those two lines. It's pretty straightforward. Here's the center mark. Select the circle, and I'm just reading what's next to the cursor. Select circle or arc to add a center mark to. So we're going to click that, and then we end up with our center mark that we can dimension to. If you notice, though, that this line looks like a solid line, it shouldn't look like a solid line. It's got a special look to it. It should be a solid line with a little dash and then a solid line. But as you can see, we would have to extend these in order to make that visible. But what we do instead is we're going to change, I'm going to delete this. Okay. What we do instead, I'm going to add this back in. Okay. We're going to type in to, just with your cursor on the screen, just type in LT scale, and you can type the whole thing, or you can just type part of it, and a submenu comes up. So this is line type scale. So we click that, and by default, AutoCAD scale factor is 1. If we go smaller, I'm going to go to 0.5. It changes the scale of the lines within the drawing. So your hidden lines, your the axis lines, all of those things will change in scale. So what you should be able to see is a small dash in the middle with bordered with 2 longer lines on either side. That's kind of the proper looking axis line. So you're gonna have to adjust that most likely. All right. Let me look at my list here. So decimals, fractions. Okay, moving dimensions. Someone asked me about moving dimensions, and that's a good question. So why would we move dimensions? And I'm going to bring back this drawing set over here. Okay. So when we dimension, okay, this is a good example. So ideally, we have quite a few dimensions in between our views. So in between these 2 views, the front view and the side view, we'd like to stack some dimensions. And in between the top view and the front view, we'd like to stack some dimensions as well. You can put dimensions out to the side, but one of the rules of thumb is to try and keep your dimensions as much as possible to the middle, like in between views. It's okay if there's a couple outside. The other rule of thumb is to get your dimensions that are bigger outside, and you guys have mostly been doing a really good job with this already, but just stacking the bigger dimensions further out than the smaller dimensions. So as you can see, we've got 3.5, 2.5, and 1.5, and it's also nice to kind of put them in a descending order like this. Looks really nice and neat. Let's see. This right here, we try and keep dimensions as much as possible off of the model itself. Sometimes that's unavoidable. You might put them where it makes most sense, but we try to keep all our dimensions off of a model view. The other thing we try to avoid is crossing these leader lines. We don't want to cross a dimension line with a leader line. So let's show you an example. Okay, so right here, this is a leader line. This is a dimension line right here, the arrow, and this one is crossing that one. We don't want to do that. That gets confusing. It looks not as good as the other way of doing it. So we'll need to move our dimensions. So to do that, we click our dimension. We get some handles here. We can click and drag. We can bring our dimension up and down like this. And usually what you end up doing is dimensioning what you think you need and then dragging them around all over the place to make it look good at the end. Because when you get a lot of dimensions, you get as many in as you can that you think you need, and then you kind of rearrange them to make them look good at the end, to make them readable and whatnot. So bit of a style thing also. Certain companies like different conventions, but these are kind of the general rules of thumb. And again, I would probably, these are the outside, I'd probably bring these in here. Something like that. Okay. And you notice that I dimensioned 1.5 to the center mark, to the center point, because if you're a machinist, you are going to set up your all of your tooling and machinery off of center marks. You don't as much care the size of the circle in the beginning. That you'll do later, and you'll just with your tool diameters. But when you're setting up your tooling, you will use center points of circles. Okay, so we got our line scale, we got our center lines, center marks, dimensioning to hidden lines, and we're just going to finish up dimensioning guidelines. So I'm going to include the dimensioning guidelines list. Okay, so here's this. Try to keep dimensions between the views. We talked about that. Place dimensions of a feature on the view that best shows the feature. So that is debatable. That's something for you to decide sometimes. But so like this view, like this dimension here, you could add that overall dimension. You could do it up here. You could do it down here. I like to have my major dimensions in the same view. So if I have this dimension here, I would also want the width as well. Just so that someone, and the height, actually, you'd want those three together, because that's kind of the first level, like generally how big is the part that we're talking about. You're going to have the major dimensions there, so I might move those around so that they're grouped together. And then you're gonna kind of base your other dimensions where you place them on what you think is kind of logical. So the thickness of the material here, you again don't want to dimension to any hidden lines, but you could dimension it up in this view or down in this view. But you can move those around as you see fit to some degree. Okay, do not cross extension and dimension lines. We talked about that. Don't dimension to hidden lines. Do not over dimension. Oh, that's a good one. Over dimensioning means you have you've got the same dimension twice on two different parts of the drawing. So this would be an example of an over dimension. So if we dimensioned from there to there, I'm going to put this on the right layer. Okay, so we've got the 2.5 here, and we have it here. That's over dimensioning. We only need it in one spot. Try to keep your text centered in the dimension lines. Okay, so centered as much as you can. So you might click on this, drag it down, something like that. So those are the general dimensioning rules. And that's it. So as we kind of work through the next couple of drawings, I'm going to have you come back and revisit 3. You're going to turn in 3. It should be pretty quick. You guys did this and this. This one looked good. You guys did a good job on these. Yeah, I've seen students struggle with this quite a bit. So good job. This one, I don't think it needs a whole lot of explanation. We're going to go back to three views though. So front view, right side view coming in from this side, and then top to bottom view up here. And example 7. So you're going to have 3. So these 2 right here, you're going to switch to fractional dimensions here and here. And example 3 will just be decimals with 3 decimals of precision. So, so 3 blocks or 3 blocks due next Sunday, but that should be right up your alley. You guys are doing a great job with these, so I don't foresee a whole lot of things to trip you guys up. So, but if you get stuck, let me know, and we'll see if we can answer those questions. So, have a good day.